Why did Rick's memories sabotage Beth's mind? Rick can't help but think back on Memory Rick's actions after resetting Jerry's memory. Throughout this current season, it became very evident that Rick's deepest desire is to become more like Memory Rick. But in order to go on and forget the past, Rick applies the memory machine he used on Jerry on himself. This allows him to access the most guarded part of his mind, where the single memory he has of Diane is stored. After all these years, Rick longs for a fresh start, so he reluctantly takes the memory out of the memory box. Now that he has emotionally opened up by storing Diane's final recollection in the memory box, Rick chooses to accompany BugAnne to the ceremonial tournament to meet with her family. But in order to escape his captivity, Rick has already constructed a gadget consisting of pieces of the digital ant farm brain. When Beth chooses to visit Rick's workshop to see how he is doing, Memory Rick uses the device to enter her head. When Rick and BugAnne go out together after Beth returns to her family, he shares his recent decision to erase Diane's memory, which immediately alarms Memory Rick because he doesn't want to separate from his cherished wife, Memory Rick, who inhabits Beth's memory, observes her tense recollections of her biological father, Rick Prime, and positions himself as the perfect father figure to console her. Recollection to force Beth to locate Diane's abandoned memories, which he wishes to save. Rick trains her memory and consciousness of various ages to become an expert infiltrator and fighter. Memory Rick brainwashes Beth into thinking that it is the only way for her to remain with her mother and maintain their family unit, thereby persuading her that it is the proper thing to do. Beth heeds Rick's suggestion and keeps her investigation a secret from the rest of the family, but Space Beth becomes skeptical of her motives when she asks Summer about Rick's subbasement levels. Using Summer's access card, Beth enters the subbasement level and uses Rick's memory box on herself, allowing Memory Rick to locate Diane and save her. When Space Beth arrives at the subbasement and begins interrogating Beth, things go wrong. After a battle breaks out between the two, a brainwashed Beth loses her self-control and kills Space Beth by snapping her neck. In a panic, Beth leaves her home, making it impossible for Memory Rick to leave with Memory Diane outside of her mind. Recollection Rick tells Memory Diane what she has planned. Things take a turn for the worst when Diane discovers one of Beth's earlier memories and realizes that she is actually only a memory, much like Diane. As Memory Rick explains that memory constructions develop self-awareness and go rogue if their false sense of individual identity is destroyed, there are strong Inception overtones. After discovering of the brainwashing, Beth's consciousnesses from various times gradually become sentient, leading memory. Where did Memory Rick come from? The 10th episode of Rick and Morty centers on Rick, who has recently been having an affair with BugAnne, a former Defiance associate. Although Rick is happy with a casual affair, BugAnne wants to present him to her family at a planned formal function. She knows that Rick hasn't forgotten about his late wife, Diane, who passed away 40 years ago. Rick adds that his and his daughter's memories of Diane have been distorted by the Omega device that Rick Prime used to remove her from all dimensions. When Beth, Space Beth, mentions BugAnne to Rick on his way home, he pulls his legs. Jerry's response appears incredibly strange. He recalls fictitious former experiences of Rick that were shared with him and Beth, and suddenly he appears to have recollections of Rick as a loving, caring father figure ingrained in his mind. Rick uses a memory projection device of his own to peek inside Jerry's mind out of suspicion of foul play and discovers that Memory Rick has infiltrated his thoughts. Ultimately, Memory Rick is the epitome of Rick, passionate, affectionate, and brave, exactly how Bird Person views him as a friend. The problem is that Memory Rick managed to infiltrate Rick's mind. In the second episode of the 7th season, The Jarrett Trap, Memory Rick was able to take sanctuary in Jerry's idle mind after they had been shuffled for some time. Memory Rick is currently navigating through Jerry's previous and present memories to create all of the fictitious, joyful events. After extracting Memory Rick, Rick places him within an ant farm brain, a digital free space that allows him to live his life as he pleases without interfering with his family's memories. It should be kept in mind that, while not being a physical person, Memory Rick has an emotional bond with his family that is at least as strong as Rick's. Recollection He shares Rick's anguish after losing Diane, and he is just as much of a brilliant innovator as Rick. It makes sense that Memory Rick feels upset about being confined to a virtual world with no opportunity to visit his family.